Hello and welcome to South Carolina ETV and South Carolina Public Radio's live broadcast coverage of the 2018 State of the State Address. I'm Gavin Jackson here in the State House in Columbia. In just a few moments, Governor Henry McMaster will take to the dais in the State House chamber before a joint assembly of House and Senate lawmakers. Now, this is the first time Governor McMaster will be delivering his State of the State Address since he became governor exactly a year ago today. That followed the resignation of former Governor Nikki Haley, who was appointed to become the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations by President Donald Trump. So this is McMaster's first State of the State speech, which gives him the opportunity to lay out his legislative agenda for the year in front of lawmakers who are already in session here in Columbia. Now, we expect him to talk about several top topics, including the ongoing VC Summer nuclear power plant expansion debacle, which I'm sure you've heard about. Also, we're going to hear him talk about his rolled out income tax plan cut. Actually, it's 1% income tax cut across all income tax brackets. He announced this during a budget press conference recently when he released his new budget. He's also going to talk about increasing per pupil funding for both public and charter schools. Also, the governor is intending to talk about a $10 million program he wants to roll out to continue fighting against the ongoing opioid epidemic in South Carolina. We also expect him to talk a little bit about offshore drilling, which the governor is against. Obviously, there's some ongoing debate about whether South Carolina can exempt itself from having drilling of oil and gas off of our shores. McMaster says that this will affect the offshore of our coast, obviously, which is a very big tourism destination in South Carolina, which he's worried could be corrupted should there be any incident with ongoing oil and gas exploration. So we're going to wait for the governor now. We're still waiting for him to arrive into the House chamber. So we expect the speech about 45 minutes long. Again, McMaster gets to lay out his legislative agenda for all these lawmakers. We have 170 lawmakers gathered in the House chamber. And now these guys have already been in session for about 3 weeks now, and they're already tackling top issues dealing with the SCANA and Dominion power deal. Obviously, that deal is still in the works right now, but they are dealing with other things in fallout after the SC&G debacle involving VC Summer. And now we're going to go right to you live in the House chamber where a governor is about to walk in. We'll go to it live right now. Okay. This is, I guess, Bryant, still kind of waiting for that formal introduction right now. So we're still waiting for the governor to enter the House chamber right now. We still have about 170 House and Senate lawmakers milling around waiting for the governor to enter. Like we said, this is his first State of the State address, but he has presided over two previous ones when he was lieutenant governor. Obviously, last year was Governor Nikki Haley's last State of the State address, in which she kind of somewhat talked about her final years here in the state before. Okay, we're going right now. Sergeant at Arms is going to introduce the governor in the House chamber.
Joint Assembly will please come to order. Sergeant? The members of the Joint Assembly will please rise to receive His Excellency, the Governor, and his distinguished escort committee.
may well be. I still don't think it's things done.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Joint Assembly and honored guests, I am proud to present to you the Honorable Henry McMaster, Governor of South Carolina.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the General Assembly, constitutional officers, and my fellow South Carolinians, I begin tonight by recognizing those South Carolinians in uniform no longer with us, who gave their lives in the line of duty and in service to us all. I'll call the names. Corporal James Eric Chapman of the Johnston Police Department. Trooper Daniel Keith Redmond, Jr. of the South Carolina Highway Patrol. Master Deputy Devin Presley Hodges of the Anderson County Sheriff's Office. Officer Jason Gregory Harris of the Spartanburg Police Department. Detective Michael Robert Doty of the York County Sheriff's Office, and Specialist Javion Shavante Sullivan, United States Army of Fort Mill, who gave his life in Iraq in support of Operation Inherent Resolve. To the families and loved ones of these 6 men, on behalf of all South Carolinians, we share your sadness, we honor their service, and we wish you strength. Thank you. To my wife, Peggy, and my children, Henry and Mary Rogers, and to the members of my cabinet, I thank you for your support. Ladies and gentlemen, our state is strong. Today, we stand at the dawn of a new prosperity in the history of our great country. This is our time. To those generations of South Carolinians who have fought, toiled, and labored, I say thank you. To those of us here tonight who have inherited the richness, beauty, and brilliance of this land and the fruits of our predecessors' talents and imaginations, I say this: let us not hesitate, let us not stumble or stall, but let us act. Let us open our eyes and focus our energies on the vast opportunities which can be ours, knowing yet that though they are vast, they are also fleeting. And to the young ones of today, those born and yet to be born, we here pledge to you now that when our work is done, we will be able to say to you, we have done our best. We have kept the faith. We have accepted the treasures and accomplishments of South Carolina, enhanced them, built upon them, and now we give them to you. May you see our time not as one of petty squabbles, ambitions, or bickering, and not one of favor to friend or punishment to foe, but one of vision, principle, sacrifice, service for you, our children, and your children to come, and theirs. I am confident that in this assembly and others throughout our state, there are men and women of goodwill and determination who can forge the ideas, hopes, and dreams of our people today and the wisdom of the centuries into a force which can lift our state into an era of prosperity, strength, and happiness unlike any we have seen before. So, with the freshness and the promise of this new year, let us begin. In 2017, we announced more than 17,000 new jobs from over 120 economic development projects, with nearly $5 million in new capital investment in South Carolina. In this, we welcome new friends to our South Carolina family through new businesses or expansions. These companies have placed great faith in our people, as we have in them, and some of them are here with us tonight. As I call their names, I'll ask them to stand, and we will recognize them at the end. Representing Samsung, Mr. June So and Mr. Tony Fraley, if you will stand. Representing Volvo, Ms. Katrina Fiording and Ms. Catherine Yale, if you will please stand. Representing Mr. BMW, Mr. Alfred Haas. Mr. Haas will please stand. Representing Magna, Mr. Steve Salvatore and Mrs. Misty Rice, please stand. Representing Harbor Freight Tools, Mr. Robbie Robertson and Mr. David Matthews. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to this historic State House. Thank you. Yes, we have a lot to offer in South Carolina. Our port in Charleston will soon be the deepest on the eastern seaboard. Our two inland ports in Dillon and Greer provide unique logistical strength, and we have 3 major research universities and a world-renowned technical college system. But newcomers all tell us the same thing. They tell us it's our people who make the biggest difference. They say that South Carolina is a handshake state. They say it's the only one. They say when someone comes from South Carolina, gives you their word, they keep it. So my word to you, the people of South Carolina, is that I will do whatever it takes to continue the success we see today, to keep and enhance our competitive edge and build for an even better tomorrow. The recent tax reform bill signed by President Trump was a great victory for the American taxpayers and for our economy. Companies have already begun announcing reinvestment and raises for employees. But with the federal government cutting taxes, it's now important than ever for us to do our part. To that end, I recently unveiled my executive budget, which proposes a $2.2 billion tax cut for every South Carolinian. The first year's cut amounts to $139 million. To all the South Carolinians listening tonight, that's $139 million that would have gone to the government and will stay with you instead. Also under my plan, retired veterans, first responders, law officers will never pay state income taxes on their retirement pay again, ever. This tax relief not only enhances their compensation during their retirement years, but also strengthens recruitment and retention. It reaffirms the unwavering commitment of South Carolinians to the people who have chosen to serve. We thank you for your service. Like Presidents Reagan, Kennedy, and now Trump, I believe that low taxes spur economic growth and prosperity. Yet, South Carolina currently has the highest marginal income tax rate in the Southeast, the 12th highest in the nation. 7 states have no income tax at all. Taxes of all kinds at all levels add up little by little, and what they do is smother growth. We must act. We must heed the lessons of history. We must respect the right of the people to their own money for their own purposes according to their own priorities. Today, the nations of the world are transitioning to a new kind of economy. Information, goods, and services are moving with lightning speed. Language is no barrier, and neither is distance. Workers who previously carried toolboxes are now carrying tablets. In South Carolina, our workforce must keep pace with our own success. Despite our low unemployment rate, we still have an estimated 60,000 jobs out there available throughout the state, and that number is expected to grow, and these are good paying jobs. We must invest in our workforce development institutions. Fortunately, we have the talent, vision, and means to do just exactly that. Dr. Tim Hardy is here tonight representing the South Carolina Technical College System, which is the engine of our economic and workforce development. Dr. Hardy, will you please stand and be recognized? We must invest in our workforce development institutions. We should use this magnificent system to the fullest extent. And to that end, I'm calling for the creation of the South Carolina Workforce Partnership. This new initiative will connect businesses with high schools and technical colleges to collaborate on internships, dual credit, and certificate programs for students interested in the skilled trades focused in the rural areas of our state. My budget also increases funding for workforce scholarships and grants so that more students can access the financial resources to obtain certificate and associate's degrees at our technical colleges. Just as we cannot have a thriving economy without an educated workforce, we cannot have a productive educational system without economic growth. They go together. When a school district prospers, the schools in that district prosper. We know that South Carolina has some of the best educators in the country. I have seen them. You have seen them. We have with us tonight the 2017 National Principal of the Year, Dr. Akil Ross from Chapin High School. Dr. Ross represents He is the kind of educator we must have, men and women who are not just good teachers, but good role models as well. And by the way, Dr. Ross is the 3rd such National Principal of the Year that we've had from South Carolina in about a dozen years. We're leading in the country. I recently visited most of the school districts in the Abbeville case. Maybe you have too. One thing is clear to me. The words minimally adequate bear absolutely no relation to the aspirations we have for our children in South Carolina. So what do we want, and what must we do to get there? We want a multifaceted system anchored by traditional public schools which boast the best teachers, principals, and technologies. We want charter schools, all public, to flourish, including those for children with special needs. Parents want vigorous, accountable, innovative school choice. So how do we accomplish all of this? After meeting with educators, parents, and students with this question in mind, I offer these observations for your edification. Number one, poverty. Poverty is the enemy of education. Poverty is the enemy of education. Some of our children, through no fault of their own, live in circumstances so bleak that intellectual stimulation and learning are but fleeting experiences. Ultimately, gainful employment of the parents or adults in the home offers the surest deliverance of that child into educated society. But economic development often comes slowly, and it's easily outpaced by the child's birthdays. So what can we do in the meantime? Good teachers and good principals clearly are the key to success. There is rarely a child in our state who will not or cannot be taught. The key is not trying to pour knowledge in, but rather opening the eyes and imaginations and letting the eagerness and fascination out. A good teacher can do this. We must have the best teachers in the country. Clemson University has a program, Call Me Mister. It works to increase the pool of available teachers and principals from diverse backgrounds. My executive budget invests more for this important initiative. But our work also will require systemic reforms, top to bottom. The Abbeville Court's observations about administrative costs being disproportionate to school size remains both accurate and astute. Spiraling administrative costs have a direct impact on educational outcomes. Consolidating small districts will reduce costs, limit duplication, and put more money and resources where they belong, and that is in the classrooms. A Department of Education study recently identified up to $338 million in savings over 5 years if consolidation efforts are undertaken. We must realize such savings, not only in school districts, but all across state government. Recruiting new jobs and economic investment will do more to improve educational opportunity than simply sending money from Columbia. Yet, students must have the resources to reach their full potential. My executive budget invests in the base student costs for South Carolina's public schools and provides $3.3 million to train new teachers for coding and computer science for classroom instruction in every school in this state. This will help us align our educational system with the technological necessities of this new economy. We must continue to invest in school choice. A robust charter school program allows parents to choose the education opportunities that best suits their children. With the entry of Erskine College as a new charter authorizer, we are expanding choice across the state. My executive budget increases per pupil funding for charter schools and establishes a transportation program to reduce barriers to access. Last year, the House and Senate passed their own versions of legislation which would bring more accountability to our education system by making the superintendent of education a cabinet-level position. The General Assembly has debated this for years. Now you have the legislature before you again. I urge you to pass this important legislation this year. We all know that teachers cannot teach and students cannot learn when distracted or threatened. Too often we've seen crime and violence find their way into our classrooms. A safe learning environment can be enhanced by the presence of a certified, trained police officer as a shield against disruption and tragedy. My budget provides $5 million for a need-based grant program to place these officers in schools. I ask each member of the General Assembly to work with me to station a trained police officer in every school, in every county, on every campus, all day, every day. We know that prosperity requires law and order. You can't have civilization without law and order. We in South Carolina cannot tolerate lawlessness. That means we must say no to sanctuary cities in South Carolina. Right now, there's no way for the people of South Carolina or anywhere else to know whether local governments are following state and federal immigration laws in South Carolina. Experience shows that a refusal to enforce one law generally reflects a softness in enforcing other criminal laws and ultimately attracts criminal behavior. Our rule is very simple: trust but verify. I want to thank Representatives Bruce Bannister and Senator Rex Rice for introducing bills that would create an enforcement mechanism to register compliance. This legislation will make our position in South Carolina clear. I ask the General Assembly to pass it immediately. We want to keep our people safe and also send a message across the nation that there will be no sanctuary cities in South Carolina. We also face new threats from inside our prisons, and it's because of technology. It's hard to believe the situation in the prisons today. Today's cell phones are so concealable and available that they've revolutionized criminal activity. With cell phones smuggled inside the prison or secretly thrown over the wall, inmates inside and their conspirators on the outside can practice extortion, conduct blackmail, plan and execute hits, operate drug rings, and run any number of fraud schemes. It's as though they never got caught in the first place. Brian Sterling, our Director of the Department of Corrections, is leading the national effort to repeal the federal law, which prohibits us from jamming these phone signals. But until we accomplish that, we must take every action, try every idea, and implement any law which will stop these people. I ask for your determined assistance, and I ask for Director Sterling to please stand and be recognized. Another threat that we face comes in pill form. It's hardly recognized by most people. The opioid epidemic is affecting every state in the country. You've read about it. But it's not a typical crime problem. This is a crisis born of human pain and suffering. This is something different. This is something we have not seen before. 54% of the pills on the street come from your neighbor's medicine cabinet in an unused prescription of too many pills. For the last 3 years, we've had more opioid-related deaths in South Carolina than homicides and drunk driving deaths combined. In 2016, this silent hurricane killed 616 people in our state. And it's not just the pills. Addictions intensify from one substance to another. From 2014 to 2015, right here, heroin deaths increased 67%. Since 2015, SLED has seen a more than 700% increase in the number of drug cases involving fentanyl-related compounds. We must take a strong, new, bold approach to this unprecedented threat. It consists of what I call a full court press, including awareness, information, and treatment. Last month, I declared a statewide public health emergency in South Carolina because of opioids. This allows us to bring the full power of the state's emergency management infrastructure, healthcare apparatus, and law enforcement resources to bear as a single team upon the growing epidemic of opioid deaths, addiction, and abuse. A comprehensive informational website has been established. Doctors are now warning their patients that opioids, which make the procedure pain-free, may also make the patient an addict. Usually 5 days' worth of pills is all it takes to produce an addict. Disposal protocols are being established. Our task force is scouring the country for ideas work. Ladies and gentlemen, this is something on which we must get busy. We must solve this crisis in South Carolina. In addition, my executive budget provides more than $10 million for treatment, prevention, and education. I'd like to take a moment to recognize a man who has demonstrated inspirational leadership and courage in challenging this opioid crisis. You know the story. It is Representative Eric Bedingfield. Mr. Bedingfield retired last week after 10 years in the House of Representatives. Today, I had the high honor of presenting him with the Order of the Palmetto on behalf of 5 million grateful South Carolinians for what he's done. But the sentiment bears repeating. Eric, I know I speak for everyone when I say, thank you for your service to the state of South Carolina. Most important function of government is to provide for the safety and security of the people. That extends to all life, born and unborn, young and old. I believe that human life begins at conception. That's why in August, I directed state agencies to stop providing state funds to abortion clinics. The right to life is the most precious of rights and the most fragile. We must never let the right to life be taken for granted. And the other things we can't take for granted. We cannot take for granted our precious natural resources which define and sustain us. From the mountains to the sea. South Carolina's beaches, sea islands, and marshes are the most beautiful in the nation. That's why people come from all over to see them. 29 million people to South Carolina every year, supporting a $20 billion tourism industry. From Little River and Myrtle Beach, Georgetown to Charleston to Hilton Head, Beaufort, and to Fusky Island, our economy and culture depend on a living, pristine coastline. Every municipality along our coast, everyone has voted to oppose drilling and seismic testing, and they are right. With offshore drilling comes the construction of onshore infrastructure. That means refineries, gas storage tanks, maintenance and operating facilities, trucks, traffic, and everything else. We simply have no place to put it. It is incompatible with everything we have and do on our coast. Oil spills, like hurricanes, can disrupt and damage a state's economy. We know we can't stop hurricanes, but we can avoid oil spills. We cannot take a chance. We must do whatever it takes to preserve this economic paradise that we call the beach or the marsh or the coast or the low country. Ladies and gentlemen, we must do whatever it takes because that coastline is made of gold for the people of South Carolina. It is a basic principle that South Carolinians must be able to trust those they elect to represent them. In turn, we must be deserving of that trust. 2 years ago, Governor Haley asked Attorney General Travis Medlock and me to co-chair the Ethics Reform Commission. Our group proposed sweeping reforms, some of which have been implemented, some not. My goal as governor is to see them all implemented. That means a lot of things. It means stronger and expanded investigative authority for the State Ethics Commission to obtain, verify, and investigate campaign finance disclosures and statements of economic interest. It means requiring legislators to recuse themselves from participating when conflicts exist. It means complying with the Freedom of Information Act. Today, the legislature, as you know, is exempted from the Freedom of Information Act request. Ladies and gentlemen, that destroys public confidence in the legislature. These exemptions must end. But as you know, ethics reform doesn't start and stop at the State House. It's a lot bigger than that. It extends to every city hall, county council, and school district. Ironically, these government bodies which are closest to the people conduct business with the least transparency of all. For example, citizens have no way of knowing who is being paid to lobby, to raise their school millage rates, change zoning laws, or to obtain easements on the land across their backyard. I ask you to join me in making sure that those paid to lobby, county council, city council, school boards, or anything else be required to register as lobbyists. You send me the bills to strengthen the public's trust in government, you send them to me and I will sign them and we'll make progress. We also must earn the public's trust every day in deciding whether to spend their money. State government can no longer afford to buy, maintain, and repair buildings and vehicles which wear out and depreciate. We should not own many of them in the first place. So, my executive budget requires state agencies to save money by leasing, renting, and consolidating administrative services through the Department of Administration. It also establishes a new property management process to provide for maximum efficiency in the use of those facilities we do own and those we lease in the future. A recent report from the department showed that by consolidating IT services alone, we saved over $14 million in 12 months. That's $14 million we could have spent on something else for the people. Another example, or could have given it back to the people. Another example, a year ago, agents at probation, pardon, and parole needed more vehicles. Sometimes they were riding around in three to a car. Well, Director Jerry Adger saw his chance. Instead of buying vehicles, he leased them from the state fleet and was able to get twice as many cars for half the cost. Jerry Adger, stand up and be recognized, please. There's no reason we cannot extend this shared services model across other agencies with similar functions, and that includes human resources, accounts payable, procurement, budgeting, reporting, maintenance, and a lot of others. But here's the point. Let's let the taxpayers keep their money. This session, we also must take further action to address the ongoing crisis in our pension system. We are now facing a $24 billion unfunded liability, which threatens our long-term stability. In April, we enacted legislation increasing employee and employer contributions for the South Carolina retirement system and the police officers' retirement system. This was the only way to immediately begin reducing this unfunded liability. Now we must finish that work. I believe we must also close the current defined benefit plan and move to a defined contribution plan for new employees. And as I asked the Joint Committee on Pension Systems Review, We should consider a number of things, including enhanced contributions, which recognize employees' years of service, the elimination of unfunded cost of living adjustments, and raising the age of retirement eligibility. We must maintain our commitment to the many people who rely on our state retirement system. We must protect the taxpayers from bearing the financial burden caused by a delay, and we must do it now before this body adjourns. South Carolina's bright economic future and continued job growth require an abundant supply of clean and affordable energy. Without it, our state is at an economic disadvantage. Santee Cooper and SCANA's decisions to suspend and abandon the construction of 2 nuclear reactors at the V.C. Summer Nuclear Station require us to take action immediately, but carefully. Customers of Santee Cooper and SCANA have already paid billions for this project. Now they face the prospect of being charged for years in the future for reactors which may never be completed. Ladies and gentlemen, this cannot happen. We must carefully assess our situation. We must construct the best possible solution. The customers must either get the reactors or get their money back. On Friday, the Office of Regulatory Staff produced an independent audit which contradicted the bleak scenario painted by SCANA's executives, concluding that SCANA's bankruptcy to be unlikely if the Base Load Review Act is reformed. In light of this information, it is plainly irresponsible to allow SCANA or any prospective purchaser to continue collecting money from customers for this project. Send me a bill that replaces the Base Load Review Act and prevents ratepayers from being charged in the future for the abandoned reactors, and I will sign it. Send me a bill that continues to place the financial burden for the failure on the ratepayers, and I will veto it. Clearly, ladies and gentlemen, it's the interests of the customers must come first. They're buying power from a monopoly that by law can charge them this fee. There's no way out for them unless we take these steps. Unlike SCANA, Santee Cooper has no stockholders to bear part of all of this debt. Santee Cooper is owned by the state. It is currently saddled with $4.3 billion in debt from this project alone, and they have nothing to show for it. It also has another $4 billion in other debt. This huge debt is going to have to be paid, but it certainly won't be paid from the sale of new power from these 2 unfinished nuclear reactors. Santee Cooper will have no choice but to raise rates on customers to pay this debt. We cannot let this happen. Their largest company, the electric cooperatives, will be required to pay 70% of this for the next 30 years. I submit to you that the only feasible solution suggested so far is the sale of Santee Cooper. There is a legitimate question as to why the state government is still running a power company after 83 years. As you know, I've been meeting with several companies which have expressed serious interest in buying Santee Cooper. Some have made proposals. Its value is well recognized. I have informed all of these interested purchasers that the state will not consider any proposal which saddles the ratepayers or the taxpayers with Santee Cooper's debt. There are powerful market and competitive forces at play here, as well as economic and legal consequences. All of us in this room have to be deliberate and wise. But being deliberate and wise does not mean we have to be tentative. We have to make the best decisions for the people, both now and for generations to come. But I have great confidence in our people and in the future of South Carolina. There are a lot of other things that we have to do, and you're very familiar with them, and you've been working on them. But we're in the right place to do it, ladies and gentlemen. There's not another place on this earth like this one where we are now. We should thank God every day that we have the opportunity to represent these people in this state. And I know there are people out there praying for us every day. They're praying for me, they're praying for you, and I say, thank you and keep it up, because we got work to do. We must encourage the spirits of charity and volunteerism among our people, among our organizations, among our institutions, including our houses of worship, because, ladies and gentlemen, government cannot and should not attempt to meet all the needs of all the people. We must promote and celebrate excellence wherever we find it, whether it's in academics, in industry, in athletics, or in art, because we know that excellence in one thing begets excellence in another. And we must approach our duties not with the goal of managing scarcity, but with the goal of creating abundance, because we can do it. And above all, I ask that we reaffirm our commitment to being smart, innovative, and doing more with less. Let the taxpayers keep more and more of their money. Let us build a state government which is efficient, transparent, and accountable. And let our service be distinguished by wisdom, vision, and steady hands. And as I close, I'm reminded that the scriptures tell us to be awake, for we know neither the day nor the hour in which the moments of opportunity will come. I believe such moments are here now. I believe this is South Carolina's time. So let us seize this day and each day which follows. Let us recognize that there's no power in a small idea. Let us resolve here now to serve the people of South Carolina in ways uncommon, to build a new prosperity for generations to come, which in their turn they can build upon and which can be recorded as the fulfillment of our highest hopes and duties. And ladies and gentlemen, let us always be proud of South Carolina. May God bless you. May his light shine upon you. May God bless South Carolina. And may God bless these United States of America.
The members of the Joint Assembly will please rise as His Excellency, the Governor, and his distinguished party depart the Joint Assembly.
Now for the Democratic message by Columbia Representative James Smith. Smith was chosen by the House Democratic Caucus to give this message.
Good evening, my fellow South Carolinians. My name is James Smith, and I'm a father, husband, combat veteran, small business owner, and lifelong South Carolinian. I, like you, love South Carolina. And because we love our state, we are committed to leaving an even better South Carolina for the next generation. Well, U.S. News and World Report ranks South Carolina dead last, 50th in education, 48th in opportunity for our citizens, 43rd in the condition of our infrastructure, and 39th in health care. And I'm tired of seeing South Carolina on the bottom of every list we want to be on the top of, and on the top of every list we want to be on the bottom of. And I know you are too. There is absolutely nothing you just heard from the governor's version of the state that will change that. The state of the state should be about our future, not the governor's political future. My fellow South Carolinians, we know that the potential in South Carolina is much more than the statistics would suggest. But the facts are the facts. And we need leaders who are willing to talk straight with us, the people of South Carolina. Tell us the truth, then work with us on a way to a better place. We as South Carolinians are a proud people, and the rankings do not reflect the love and pride we have in our state. Look, leaders should lead. Focus on the challenges that matter. Leaders should rise above partisan politics and bring people together around a common cause. Our 35th President, John F. Kennedy, said it best. Let us not seek the Republican answer or the Democratic answer, but the right answer. And I, along with members of the Democratic caucus in the House and Senate, are ready to tackle the important issues facing our state. We are ready to work with our Republican colleagues to find the right answers to the real challenges. First, clear and transparent action must be taken to restore public trust in the State House. Ethics reform should be on the legislature's agenda every year. We must begin by strengthening income disclosure for public officials, provide additional limits on the use of campaign funds, improve the rules governing the lobbying of our public bodies, and prohibit campaign donations from utilities to those responsible for their regulation. When we are working on behalf of the people of South Carolina, there can be no doubt that we are serving their interest. And when I think of the VC summer failure, I think of people like Mrs. Richardson, whom I met recently, living in North Columbia. She's retired and living on a fixed income. Caring for an adult disabled child, her roof leaks, medical and prescription costs are rising, and she is often faced with having to choose whether to pay for food or prescriptions or the power bill or the mortgage. And she is not alone. To think that she and generations to come are now compelled to pay for a nuclear power plant that will never generate a kilowatt of power, that is an injustice that must be corrected. Ms. Richardson and all affected deserve better. Individual ratepayers and businesses must be paid back the money taken from them. I know this can be done, and the governor's plan must deliver. But that is not enough. We have to reform a broken system that failed South Carolina. We must have an independent, accountable consumer advocate to protect the interest of ratepayers. And we cannot consider energy reform complete if we do not make advancement in solar power and efficiency programs. We remain more than a decade behind our neighboring states, and our citizens deserve more access to these important lower-cost alternatives. That is essential to building new economic opportunities in our state. Our success in attracting new jobs to South Carolina has brought focus on the challenges we have in preserving our natural resources, fixing our broken infrastructure, and in providing the educated workforce. We know that protecting our natural resources and expanding economic opportunity go hand in hand. And nowhere is that more clear than in protecting our coastline. All of the legislature should speak with one voice and say, there will be no drilling off South Carolina's coast. The billions of dollars and thousands of jobs generated from tourism should not be placed at such a risk. And the bipartisan override of the governor's veto of the desperately needed infrastructure plan has set South Carolina on a course paving our way for new economic opportunities. And at the same time, we must prove to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. And we face a challenge in providing an educated workforce. And while some efforts like our apprenticeship program have helped connect some with opportunities, our economy is not working for everyone. And too many hardworking South Carolinians are finding it harder to make ends meet. Improving our education and training is the way to bridge the gap. Public education is the most important job of state government. I know of no parent who aspires for their child to receive a minimally adequate education. South Carolina only succeeds if we all succeed. Our students deserve and have a right to a high-quality education, regardless of where they live. So how do we get there? Support our teachers. They are on the front lines in educating our children. We can and should increase their pay to the Southeastern average. Support their professionalism and improve recruitment and retention. We can and should reduce class sizes in the elementary years and provide more high-quality care and education. It can't happen overnight, but we must begin down the path of school funding equity. We know what to do. We know how to do it. We need only the will to get it done. And we are failing our best and brightest when they seek higher education and are then saddled with huge debt and no opportunities after graduation. If leveraged properly, our higher education institutions are engines for economic development. We can and must make higher education more affordable for our own citizens. And we have to align our education system, pre-K, K through 12, technical colleges and universities with business and industry to ensure we are setting our young people up for success. And too many hardworking families in South Carolina do not have access to health care simply because they live here. Look, every South Carolinian should know that not by accepting our own federal funding, your tax dollars, we're only paying for the health care in other states. So it's not about bigger or smaller government. It's about smarter government. South Carolina should write our own plan to expand health care coverage, bring billions in new revenue to our state, 40,000 new jobs without raising 1 cent in taxes. It's the common sense thing to do. It is the fiscally responsible thing to do, and it is the morally right thing to do. And we must insist that we are one South Carolina and not two. Some say that there is a forgotten South Carolina. But in our South Carolina, no one and no place can be forgotten. We need a deliberate focus on rural economic development to ensure that the building blocks for economic opportunity are present. A high-quality education, infrastructure, the availability of health care, our natural resources preserved. We can do these things. For example, we must throw our support behind efforts to expand high-speed internet. Every child must be able to access the world, whether in Allendale or Anderson, Greenville or Greeleyville. And our state is blessed with talented and courageous women who make up more than half of South Carolina's population. They bring home part or all of the income of 2/3 of the families in our state. Yet working women full-time earn 74 cents on the dollar compared to their men in the same job. African-American women just earn 53 cents on the dollar compared to men. In other words, women work for South Carolina, but South Carolina does not yet work for women. South Carolina is just one of only 4 states without an equal pay law, and it is past time the legislature act and pass equal pay for equal work. Look, no one likes to pay taxes, but taxes in South Carolina should be balanced, fair, and competitive. And if the governor was serious about providing tax relief, he would tackle real comprehensive tax reform and pursue changes in our system that overburden businesses and families. So why then did the governor veto tax relief that allowed low-income families to keep more of their hard-earned dollars? In the end, if we really want to fulfill our greatest economic potential and build an economy that works for everyone, we can only achieve that by providing a high-quality education, access to health care, investing in our infrastructure, and we must protect our natural resources and foster a strong arts and creative community. It is the quality of life that we all seek that keeps homegrown talent here and brings talent from out of state that will help build opportunity for all. I know we can do these things if we all work together. Look, one-party absolute power has not served South Carolina well. I believe that the people of our state are tired of the partisan trench warfare. I believe you are tuned in tonight for the same reasons I stand here tonight. We deserve better. The future is ours, but we have to be willing to fight for it. I want to speak to each South Carolinian within the sound of my voice. It is when we understand our shared aspirations for ourselves and our families, we then focus on common challenges. Because in the end, South Carolina cannot succeed if we're willing to leave some behind. We cannot succeed if we just accept that's the way things are, so that's the way things will be. We are all in this together, and we share this time. And I know our past does not have to be our future. Whether or not the governor and the House and the Senate take actions to meet the real challenges facing our state is up to you. We cannot wait on their will to bring about the change we all know is needed. I tell my children that the most important job in our democracy belongs to you, the citizen. South Carolina does not have to be 50th in education or at the bottom of any list. I and the members of the Democratic caucus believe in the people of South Carolina, and we believe it is your will to see South Carolina move forward. And if the governor and the legislature cannot move South Carolina in the right direction, the people will. This is our South Carolina. It is up to us. Now let's go do this. God bless you, and God bless the great state of South Carolina. Thank you.
And that was Representative James Smith of Columbia giving the Democratic message. Now I'm joined here live in the State House lobby with several lawmakers, including Senator Harvey Peeler from the upstate. Senator Peeler, tell us about your thoughts on the governor's first State of the State address tonight.
Well, good evening. I tell you, Governor McMaster is relatively new at being governor, but he's not new at South Carolina government. It's like that commercial, he knows a thing or two because he's seen a thing or two, and that came through loud and clear this evening in his State of the State address. He touched on a lot of subjects, a lot of important issues. He laid out his agenda. I look forward to working with him and trying to accomplish his agenda. And he had me at South Carolina as a handshake state.
And sir, you mentioned the opioid epidemic being a huge problem, especially up in the upstate where you're from. What is it like to have that kind of attention in this speech for you, in your opinion?
It makes all the difference in the world to have his support, and it's obviously it's one that he really has a passion about. Look forward to working with him as chairman of the Senate Medical Affairs Committee on this issue.
And anything that you wanted to hear that maybe you didn't hear in the speech, or do you think he covered all his bases tonight?
I was really proud of him tonight. He stepped up to the plate, and I think the people around South Carolina appreciated it.
Thank you very much, Senator Peeler. Appreciate it.
Handshake state. Thank you.
Representative Anderson, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Tell us your thoughts on the governor's first State of the State speech tonight. Reactions.
I thought the governor did well with his State of the State address tonight, but I know that all of us in South Carolina are tired of being on the top of every list that we'd like to be on the bottom of, and to be on the bottom of every list we want to be on top of, and that is education, that is health care, all of those things we desire to be on top of. Job is what we need in South Carolina. Infrastructure is what we need in South Carolina. Here we are. I represent District 103. Georgetown, we just sold Georgetown Steel Mill again, and we're very happy of that. It's going to be opening up again, but the main thing is to get the Port of Georgetown dredged. I heard the governor talking about Charleston will have the deepest port, but what about Georgetown? Wilmington, North Carolina, then it's Georgetown, then it's Charleston. Ships will be able to come in. So my thing is getting the Port of Georgetown dredged, that spin-off business from Bowens, from Volvo, will come to Georgetown. So that is my P, and I will be talking to the governor about it once again. Every year, I send the governor, whoever the governor is, I send the governor a letter stating some of the things that is needed in Georgetown. And I've had a conversation with him already, but we will be sending that letter also. Like I said, healthcare, education, those are things that we really need to work on in the nation state of South Carolina.
Great, thank you very much, sir. Sorry. We got Representative Stephen Long coming up here. Representative Long, thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir.
Tell me again your thoughts on the governor's address. You're a Republican. He's a Republican. Tell me what you thought.
I thought he did an excellent job. Really laid out quite the agenda. For years now, people have been kicking the can down the road. It's good to see somebody actually take some leadership this year.
Anything that you really liked in his speech that really resonate for your constituents back home?
Yeah, I particularly like that he reaffirmed his commitment to defending life. I like that he's taken leadership on it when it comes to ethics reform, reforming our pension system with the nuclear reactors and the energy companies. Just across the board, we've got a lot on the agenda, and glad to see everything he has put forward.
Great. Thank you very much, Representative Long.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
And now we have Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey. Good to see you.
You too.
So, Senator Massey, tell us some of the top points that you heard from the governor tonight and how it might relate to the Senate legislative agenda. Are they in sync from what you heard tonight?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think you've got to give the governor credit. It was a very good speech, and I think he hit on a lot of the important points. He hit on a lot of the things that are hot right now, and even reminded us of some of the other things. But yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty close. So I was glad to hear some of those things.
And one of those main things was the SCANA situation, and obviously that was a big news coming out yesterday when he's saying he wants a bill coming to his desk that repeals the Baseload Review Act. What's the read in the Senate like that? Do they want to send him a bill like that, or are they going to send him a bill that he might veto?
Like, I think it's going to be a fight in the Senate, to be candid with you. And I think it's going to be a tough fight. But I suspect that right now that most of the people are in line with that. Like, I've thought all along, it's very difficult to defend allowing the utilities to continue charging people for something they're never going to get. I don't know how to sell that to the people that I represent. But I'm glad to hear the governor take a position on it. It's important to know where he is, and hopefully that'll help us get together and work on some solutions.
And when do we start seeing movement on that? Is there any timeline, at least in the Senate, when you guys want to start taking up some of these bills?
Yeah, so the House has started out first, and we knew that was going to happen all along. I think you're going to see some subcommittee action in the Senate, probably even next week, but certainly very soon to try to start moving some of those things along. And it's going to be a step-by-step process because there's several pieces of legislation we have to consider. But I think we'll take it one at a time, and hopefully we'll be able to come up with a good solution for people.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now we have Representative Terry Alexander from Florence, who's just off a new birthday, from what I understand.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
22, I think it is.
24.
Representative Alexander, tell us what you heard tonight in the governor's speech. You're a Democrat from the PD. What did your people back home hear too?
What did I hear tonight from the governor is what I've been hearing for the last 12 years from the Republican governor, is that as we got problems, this is how we fix them, and nothing happens. This state government is just like Washington. They're controlled by Republicans in the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives, and nothing gets done. We'll keep hearing the same thing over and over and over and over again. I think it's time for us to do something else. I think it's time for us to change leadership. I don't want to sound partisan, but I've been hearing this for 12 years, what our issues are, and the people who are in charge are not doing what they say they should be doing.
Was there anything in that speech that maybe you did agree with the governor on?
Well, I agree with him in terms of education. I think we really need to take a look at education. But I wonder how serious we are about that when he supported the courts dropping the case for the suits that happened down, particularly down the court of shame. So I'm wondering how serious our elected officials are, particularly those who are in charge and who are in the majority, how serious they are about helping the people of South Carolina.
Great. Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you,
Appreciate
sir.
your time.
Thank you.
Senator Greg Hembry from Horry County.
Hey, Gavin, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing, sir?
Doing great.
I want to talk to you because you're from the coast. What you thought about the governor coming out talking about offshore drilling? Obviously, he's made some statements about that before, but want to get your thoughts tonight.
Well, very strong on that issue. That's been an issue along the coast that we're unified about. We have communicated that to the governor, and obviously he has seized the value in that position, and of course he's advocated that to President Trump. So he's not only talked about it, he's taken action on it.
Does that make you a little bit more optimistic to hear that he's kind of pushing that for that exemption at the same time?
Yes, well, certainly that he's taken a step forward on it. Florida's gotten the exemption. Feel pretty comfortable we'll get one also. So that'll keep us where we need to be.
And what do you think of the governor's speech tonight? Obviously, you've seen him in action in the Senate when he was lieutenant governor. He presided over the Senate. What's it like to see him now as the governor of the state?
Well, I thought the speech was really displayed a great deal of leadership. He hit on the major topics. I thought it was terrific that he led with education. I think it's the most important issue facing our state right now. And we have these crises that we're dealing with. But as far as long-term, day in and day out, K-12 education is the biggest issue we face. And he was very strong on that. School safety was terrific on that. School choice with building the most robust traditional public school system as the anchor, and then having school choice for those that want to go that direction, public school choice. So it was a real strong speech up and down.
Very good.
All right,
Thank you, sir.
very much.
Appreciate it.
Good night.
Representative Caesar McKnight from Williamsburg County. Good to see you, sir.
Hey, good evening. How are you doing?
Good, good. Democrat from the PD again, like Terry. Tell us a little bit about what you heard in the governor's speech tonight.
Well, I heard some things that touched me, but the substance that I was looking for was primarily what are we going to do about education in the rural areas? And I didn't really hear any substance. Yes, he made mention of the Abbeville decision, but as everyone knows, the legislature got the Supreme Court to cave on that, and now we have yet another generation of kids in South Carolina that live along the corridor of shame that are going to get a substandard education. South Carolina cannot fix what it will not face, and yet again we refuse to face the facts that we're not going to have an educated society in this state where we only have good educations along the coast, over near Charlotte, in Columbia, and by Greenville. That just won't work. And the thing that really bothered me the most is I didn't hear him mention anything about expanding health care for the citizens in South Carolina. We lose approximately 1,500 people a year for a lack of health care in South Carolina. And there's nothing to tackle that I heard from the governor. I'm encouraged by him. I find him to be easy to work with, but I just think that he needs to focus a little bit more on the substantive issues that I just mentioned.
Very good. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We've got Representative Robert Brown coming up, too. How you doing, Representative Brown? Good to see you. Good.
Good to see you.
Another Democrat. Want to get your thoughts on what the governor said tonight. Obviously, maybe some things he didn't say that you guys wanted to hear, perhaps.
Well, you know, he talked about offshore drilling, no offshore drilling. I certainly, that's my position as well. But he didn't talk about the teacher shortage across this state, which I think, you know, just the extension of the Terry program would help fill some of those vacancies. And the traffic congestion in the low country, it's a nightmare. And I was hoping he would talk about that to help address that. And there was a few more things that he didn't say that I would love to talk about. Good.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We've got Representative David Mack now. How you doing, sir? Good to see you.
You?
Good, good.
Good to see you.
Talking to some other Democrats. Tell me what you thought about the governor's speech tonight, what you heard, what you didn't hear, perhaps.
I was disappointed. There was nothing concerning health care, which was troubling to me. We have some serious problems as it relates to health care, still reeling from not taking Medicaid expansion money from years ago, which you had the opportunity to take. We were talking about tax cuts, but we have so much that needs to be done in the state of South Carolina. Our public education system, our teachers are not being paid. State employees, we have so much respect for first responders, and rightfully so, our school teachers, but they're not being paid, and the retirement system is in big trouble. So none of that was addressed. It was sort of glossed over and what have you, and there's a lot of work to be done. So I was disappointed in that, but it's a time, these are some tough times right now, and we're gonna have to get some really practical answers and work together in this body in order to move forward.
Very good, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. Representative Gilliard.
How you doing?
Good to see you, sir.
You good now? You got to take a little time with me because this
got
is the first time for the governor.
Yeah.
So I had to take some,
you took some
quick
notes there. Okay.
if you don't mind.
Yeah, go right ahead, sir.
All right, because it's the first time I've done this. But anyway, you know, in his speech tonight, he talked about the teachers. He gave our teachers throughout the state of South Carolina accolades. I was proud of that, you know, but far too many times we don't practice what we preach. Okay, we're really, in essence, we're losing our teachers to Georgia, North Carolina, etc. They're leaving the state, and that's why we are forced now into advertising for our teachers. My point is, I have a bill in asking for 15% across the board rate hike for our teachers. We got to keep those wonderful teachers that he talked about. We want to keep them here. Secondly, economic upswing. Well, if you know anything about economics, you know, the growth domestic product, it takes 8 to 12 years for consistency to have a blessed economy. That credit should go to President Obama. This is not Donald Trump economy. Let's get that straight, okay? I just like to put it in layman's terms so people can understand. And then he talked about the ratepayers. Well, I was blessed to serve on that committee, the investigating committee the speaker appointed us to. The ratepayers should not pay 1 cent toward 2 reactors that are not being built. In other words, they should be compensated. And then we should look out for those employees who lost their jobs. Those are the people who we need to look out for. Number 4, he talked about, and I got to put this one in, this is very important, because as of yesterday, sad to say, in Benton, Kentucky, we had a tragedy, okay? I had a bill in for almost 2 years now in referencing the metal detectors. Now, in his State of the State tonight, he referenced that he wants to pay $5 million for extra law enforcement in these schools. These law enforcement needs assistance with my metal detectors bill to help secure security in our schools. Okay?
Thank you very much for your time, Representative
Thank you for
Gilliard.
having me.
Yep.
Okay.
We got Representative Josiah Magnuson. Good to see you again.
Thank you, sir.
How you doing? Tell me a little about your perspective. We heard from a lot of Democrats. The governor talked about tax cuts tonight. What are your thoughts? What stood out to you?
So I was very happy with the speech tonight. I thought it was a very positive message, a vision for South Carolina. I think really the reason is because he talked a lot about government reform and also about how government is not the answer to our problems. We really find that in American history, liberty is what works. And I think that scaling back the size of government, but also reforming it, cleaning up Columbia, cutting back on some of these legislative committees and things that control a lot of the levers of power, that's going to be so helpful to us. But then also he talked about charity and volunteerism, and I think that is the community aspect that America is built on, and I think that will be so helpful for our state to prosper in the future.
And I know the governor mentioned making lawmakers subject to FOIA. What was it like in the chamber? I kind of heard scattered applause. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we definitely need greater transparency in the State House and the State Senate, and I would certainly support some stronger ethics rules. I think that would be definitely helpful.
Very good. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate
it. Thank you, sir, for the opportunity.
Representative Joe Jefferson.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you, sir. How are you doing tonight?
Fine. And you?
Good, good.
Good.
Tell us your thoughts on the governor's speech tonight, his first day of the state.
I thought his speech was outstanding. I thought he did an outstanding job. There were a few areas that I felt that he should have talked about that he didn't. One was education and the charter schools. Charter schools are good, but it's taken away from public funding. So that's a problem. The other issue was he didn't mention health. Health is very important in our state. People have got to have appropriate health. If you don't have good health, then you're in trouble. So that's a problem. But I think overall he did a good job.
Very good. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right.
Got Representative Gary Smith coming up here. Representative Smith, how are you doing, sir?
How are you?
Good, good.
Good.
Tell me, what did you think about the governor's first day of the state tonight?
I thought the governor did a real good job of taking and pointing out a lot of major issues that my constituents back home are talking about. Education, the economy, tax relief, tax reform, those sorts of things that I think really speak to a lot of the issues that they're concerned about back home.
Anything else, anything specific that maybe that the income tax cut or opioids being a problem back home, or anything that really stood out to you in your opinion?
I think that the whole path that he laid out for us for a brighter future for the state of South Carolina through education reform, through tax reform, through those sorts of things, I think is the things that will resonate the most with the citizens that I have back home. The opioid issue, it's a problem, no doubt about that. And he has certainly laid out, instead of doing the things the way we normally do, which is funding projects, funding things in silos, having a organized, coordinated program, I think makes a lot better sense for our state in addressing that issue.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it, sir. Got Representative Jerry Govan coming up here. Representative Govan, how are you doing, sir?
How's everything?
Good. Tell me, Democrat from the Orangeburg County area, what were your thoughts on the governor's speech tonight?
Well, yeah, I'm also speaking as the chair-elect of the Legislative Black Caucus on behalf of Representative King, who's our chair. Yeah, it was some interesting things that he said tonight. Very pleased with certain parts of the speech, but concerned particularly in terms of some of the educational component. A little concerned about the fact that we're talking about increasing funding for charter and choice as being an end-all, be-all in terms of improving education in South Carolina, particularly when the Supreme Court has let the state off the hook. We're concerned about that because that is not going to help overall when you look at where we are educationally in the state. We really need to raise the base student costs and invest in our existing structure and improving the quality of our teachers. The governor mentioned that. There was a lot of details that were left out. So we want to look at what he said and go through it in more detail and then make a judgment from there.
Great. Very much. Appreciate it, sir. Thank you. We got Representative Robert Williams coming back from the PD too. How you doing, sir?
Hey, how you?
Good. Just want to get your thoughts. Obviously, another Democrat might have a little different take on the governor's speech tonight. What was your reaction to the governor's first day of the state?
Well, I kind of think that the governor somehow missed some of the key points tonight. he had the opportunity to talk about some infrastructure. He had the opportunity to talk about some really economic growth, especially in rural South Carolina, such as places from where I'm from. You know, certainly we have a great deal of need of economic development that we need in our community to put people back to work. People want to have jobs, want to be able to take care of their families. We have a lot of folks in our area actually moving out of our area. The numbers are going down because we just don't have the quality of manufacturing in the PD.
Very good. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your time. All right. Got Representative Justin Bamberg come up here.
Hey,
good to see you, sir.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Another Democrat. Want to get your thoughts on what the governor was saying. Anything that stood out to you that he maybe didn't say?
Yeah, I wasn't all that impressed. In all actuality, he did touch on some good things, but at the end of the day, I think that we're avoiding some of the key things we need to look at. The state is broke. We need new revenue streams. And I heard nothing geared towards that. The lifeblood of South Carolina is small business. There was also no mention about our agricultural community, specifically those farmers who are selling off property, who are selling off materials because they're not able to cover what they need to cover. You know, so it's nice, and you know, everybody appreciates the BMWs and the large corporations, but we've got to help the small businesses out. You know, and I also wish he would have given a more unifying message, particularly given his alignment to President Trump. I think that it would have been nice for South Carolinians to hear in a moment when everyone in the state is watching that Governor McMaster is a governor for all people living here and not just some.
And you didn't hear that?
I did not hear that. No, sir.
Gotcha. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir.
And wrapping up, we have freshman Representative Marvin Pendervis. Good to see you.
It's a pleasure to be here. How
Great.
are you?
Good. I appreciate you making time for us. Tell me what your thoughts were on the governor's speech. This is your first day of the state as well.
This was, and so I was very encouraged about a number of the things he said, and certainly when it comes to education and job creation and opportunity, I think there was still some things left to be desired. I appreciate his efforts in discussing what we need to do when it comes to teacher pay, when it comes to the student per pupil cost, and making sure that we do what we can to fund public education. But I think we got to look at exactly, actions speak louder than words. And so it's certainly something for us to revisit when it comes to how we fund public education here in South Carolina. And that's something that I think we've gotten wrong over the last several years. And certainly some of the things that I've been interested in is just revisiting some of those funding formulas, particularly in the form of Act 388. And how we address public education here in South Carolina and really making sure that we really are educating our students.
Very good, sir. I appreciate it.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you. And that concludes our live broadcast coverage on South Carolina ETV and South Carolina Public Radio of Governor McMaster's first State of the State address here in the State House, Columbia, 2018. I'm Gavin Jackson. On behalf of all of us at SCETV and South Carolina Public Radio, thanks for tuning in. Good night.